Hey friends, one of the questions that I have been asked often in my life is basically how did I turn out so well or survive so well? How am I able to talk about things so easily? Um, I've gotten a lot of compliments, especially this past year, talking to a few professionals, and they're like, people that go through what you go through, like, are broken and have all kinds of issues and stuff like that. And basically them saying things like they're freaking amazed by me and stuff. And it's weird because I know that I've done better than a lot of people, but I'm sure there are other people out there that have done good too. I always tell myself I'm not the only one that does well or has certain ideas, like all of that kind of stuff. Um, but I haven't actually met anyone else that has survived quite like I have and is as open as I am. Um, so I am pretty proud of myself. And this past year, hearing some of that feedback just kind of reminded me of what I've been through and how I've survived it and stuff like that. And I have like so many freaking tips and stuff, or at least in regards to like what has helped me with my trying to overcome stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I've spent a lot of my life, like, really fucking messed up. Y'all, just probably weren't aware of it because I hit it really fucking well. Um, I'm real big about not making, uh, I don't know, scenes isn't the right word, but I don't like, my whole life I've just wanted to be strong. Like, I want to be strong. And so I don't like feeling weak or vulnerable. So I don't like to show any weaknesses or vulnerabilities. So people won't know where to hit me. But I think for me personally, some of the things that have helped me, I mean, honestly, I could make like a whole freaking TV series, like an episode about each specific thing, because there's so many things. Um, but first, I want to credit like I was just born. I was born like with a warrior's heart, basically. Like I've always been a fighter. I've always wanted to be a fighter. I've always wanted to be strong. Um, I always wanted to be like strong enough in order to be able to like bear things that other people couldn't and to like help them and stuff. And I remember all these like slogans and stuff from like the 80s and 90s that I kind of like took in consciously as like I was like I accept this programming. Like the army slogan for the longest time was like be the best you can be. And there were all kinds of other like slogans and stuff about like being strong and like knowledge is power and stuff like that. And I just absorbed all of that shit like a sponge and was like, yes, I will take this all in. I will make this part of myself. This will be my philosophy or whatever. But I'm also optimistic as fuck. Um, I my whole life have been blessed just with an ability to see things that other people can't or don't see. Not saying I'm the only one, just saying, man, haven't met anybody that sees things the way I do yet. But I can find the flip side to every fucking thing because there are so many different perspectives you can look at things. It's not just a here or there. It's a all around, in, out. You can change your perspective on anything. And honestly, like flipping your perspective on something is, I think, one of the most powerful things you can do to change your life. So, so when bad things happen to me, I would focus on the positive mostly, or I would tell myself, some of the stuff, I don't know if it's necessarily healthy or not, but it worked for me, and I'm glad I did it. So, like when I would experience hardship, I would always remind myself, well, somewhere in the world, somebody else is experiencing something worse. Like people have experienced worse. Or I could tell myself it could be worse. At least it's not worse. And I would think a lot about, um, okay, what am I getting out of this experience? Because, most of us, I think, are aware that it is the challenges that we face in life that generally propel us forward, that cause us to grow in character and spirit and other areas and stuff like that. Now, that being said, I don't think anybody should wish for anything bad to happen to them, but every time I would encounter something bad, I would just be like, and I don't know, some of this cliche. I think some of this is like religious stuff. I don't really know much about that, but that whole saying like suffering is good for the soul, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And those were things that it's like every time I experience something, I was like, if it doesn't, it's like what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Like I'm going to experience this thing, and I'm going to survive it, and somehow I'm going to find a way to transmute this fucking bullshit into some sort of strength for me. And honestly, I feel like that's my superpower. I mean, just to be real with y'all, I have actually been praying for like bad things to happen the last few months, because I swear every hardship I have encountered in life has just made me stronger. And I'm just like, I just want to keep leveling up, I mean, and one day I was like, like maybe, one of my limbs should be cut off or something. I mean, not really, but just being kind of like ridiculous and silly, because that's how I am. But no, seriously, like everything I have been through in my life, it may have taken a while, but every single hardship I have encountered, in a way, I'm thankful for them, because if it doesn't break you, then it's going to make you stronger. And if you intentionally um, kind of focus on pulling the lessons out of your experiences, I think that you can help um, increase the growth that you have in that experience. And so like a lot of my experiences for me, especially when I was younger, I felt like some of the bad experiences I had, they helped me become more empathetic towards other people, helped me better understand other people that have gone through pain and stuff. It might not be exactly the same, but once you've experienced certain types of pain to a certain level, it's like your heart can kind of connect with other people a little bit easier. And that was something I was always very thankful for. And I'm not a religious person. I wasn't really raised religious, but I was um, like read Bible stories as a kid. And I mean, we went to church a couple of times, but it was always a different church, and I didn't really absorb anything. But I remember when I was a kid, I was read Bible stories, and I really liked the stories I was read about God and Jesus and stuff. And there were certain things that stood out to me, sayings that, were preached or whatever, such as, something along the lines of to try to understand someone, try imagining walking in their shoes. And, there was one other one that was also like really big and essential to me. I mean, I know the golden rule was a big thing, though technically I think that comes from Confucius. Treat others the way you'd want them to treat you. And to understand someone, try imagining walking in their shoes. And for me and my little kid brain, and I'm fucking telling you guys, I am definitely on the freaking spectrum. Um, you know, I know I'm on the spectrum, and I'm not going to go into this because this is, most of y'all haven't seen the other videos I've posted about this, but my little kid brain, when people would tell me things, I mean, it is so funny. I mean, I think everybody's a problem solver, but I have been a problem solver my entire freaking life. Like, I am a fucking machine, man. Like sometimes I have hard time articulating stuff, but like I am a deep thinker, a deep processor, and I'm not afraid to consider all the possibilities, unlike most of the asshats in the world who won't even consider possibilities, like in a purely hypothetical sense, like they're just so close minded. They put up their own walls to limit their own growth and perspective. It's so ridiculous. Anyways, but one of the things that helped me a lot, and and sometimes I hate to kind of talk about it because you can't fucking talk about like faith and God and stuff like that without so many people being triggered, because there is a lot of freaking religious trauma in the world. And I'm from the South where there's an extra lot, so I don't normally like share my beliefs and stuff with people because it just does not feel like a safe space. But I'm older now. Now I'm like, come on, bitches, I'm ready for the fight, so let's do it. But when I was younger, I, did not feel like I was able to defend myself, or like I had the bandwidth to even deal with, standing up for myself and my beliefs and stuff. But for me, when I was read Bible stories and I sought to understand, like God and Jesus, because I was pretty freaking amazed by those stories. I mean, even if they're just stories, you can look at characters and stories and try and figure out, like, what were their motives, like, sort of thing. And I remember as a kid trying to understand, how Jesus could be so loving, etc., in order to sacrifice himself for everyone, and I wanted to understand it because he was my role model. Like I wanted to be, so loving that, like that I could do something like that. And, and I don't know, like I've read like little bits and pieces of the Bible over the last year or two, but I hadn't read anything then. So I don't know where I got this knowledge. But in my head, I just calculated, and I felt really sure. It was weird because it's kind of like a deja vu feeling, that he had to have gone through some shit. He had to have seen some people in pain, and he had to have experienced a lot of pain and hardship himself. Maybe that's not true, but this is how my brain processed things. And so I was like, okay, well, for him to be able to love other people and sacrifice, I mean, for him to be able to sacrifice himself or to be willing to sacrifice himself, he has to obviously give care and love other people a whole lot. What would make him capable of caring for and loving people that much? And in my brain, it was like, well, he must empathize with them. And in order to empathize, you usually have to understand, to some degree, the experiences that other people have gone through in order to, like, understand their, like, unique perspectives and stuff. But anyway, so I kind of processed that. And then also I sought to, to understand God and figure out how the hell could he, like, sacrifice his son? Why did bad things in the world happen and all of that stuff? And, for me at that time, I was like, well, I mean, I always thought of God as like a loving father figure who obviously knows way more than we do and knows that life is complicated as fuck and we're just not mentally advanced or mature enough to understand that there's usually a reason for everything. And I also kind of saw it, like, I didn't mean for this to turn into like a whole spiritual thing, but I also kind of thought to be like, why did God create us? Like, why did he do all of this stuff? And for me, my answer was, like, I felt like God must have been lonely or something, because I tried to imagine, like, well, if I was God, like, why would I have done this? And, what would I do differently? And all that kind of stuff. Like, if I had my own universe and I was creating things, like, what would I do? And, and for me, I was like, I feel like God just wanted some friends and some family. And that if you create something, I mean, you got to give it free will. But if you create something, I mean, like, it's probably going to, like, love and appreciate you because of the fact you created it. And that's not really a sincere relationship. Like, that's not a relationship between, like, friends and family, really. So I was like, okay, well, I think some of these things exist because God's kind of trying to push us away, maybe test us a little bit or help us realize that, like, we want that connection because we actually want it, or we don't want that connection. We want to just do our own thing, that sort of thing. And yeah, anyways, long story short, no one told me that I couldn't talk to God. So I just started talking to God when I was a kid. And I felt like he talked back to me, at least telepathically and through the things around me. And it's really interesting because I kind of forgot about a lot of this after some of the trauma I went through. And it's been coming back to me very vividly in the last couple of years. But I remember talking to God about, and it's weird, thinking back on it, because it's like, man, I see how all the dots of my life connect. But I remember being a big fan of Jesus, and I loved God, and I just wanted to be his friend. I didn't want him to be lonely. And And I talk to him like a person, because if it was me, that's how I would want, like to say, like, treat other people the way you'd want to be treated. I wouldn't want to be elevated and treated, like, I mean, look at how we treat celebrities. We put them on pedestals. We treat them like objects. We don't talk to them like normal people. I can only imagine how uncomfortable they must be most of the time. You never know whether someone is being real with you, whether someone is connecting with you because they have a sincere desire to like connect with you as a person, or because they want to like, get something out of it, or just be like, oh, look who I met, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's not how I'd want to be treated. And so that's not how I perceive God wanting to be treated. Um, and I don't fucking care what your Bible or whatever all the other shit that you have says. Like, I think there's a little bit of truth in everything, but I don't think anything's 100%. And I have heard that straight from the source. So I am at peace and confident with my things. So I personally believe that everyone should believe basically whatever the fuck they want. Like, hopefully there's some rhyme and reason to it, but I'm a big supporter. If as long as you're not hurting other people, like, believe whatever makes you happy. I mean, I feel like, since I'm like outing like conversations with God and stuff, that he doesn't care what you believe. He just wants you to be happy and to be good to one another. And, like, I think some people said like the universe is love. That's what I believe. The universe is love and God is love. And if we know God to be love, then a whole lot of shit that are in that book sure don't make sense. And then if you think about all the biases and the limited, perspectives that went into it and the translation stuff, I think it's really easy to argue a lot of that. But so many people want to take things literally and not actually think for themselves. I mean, I don't get why people don't like thinking. I mean, I think thinking is fun, but people don't want to think for themselves. They just want someone else to tell them how things work. So, I don't know, they can just exist like zombies. But, pretty sure I was born on this planet to actually be alive and to live. And anyways, to get back to the original subject of this video, yeah, God freaking got me through a lot of shit. And because I felt like, going back to the story I was starting to tell, I was a big fan of Jesus. I wanted to be a knight of the round table. And I remember, as a very, very young child, realizing that Jesus probably went through some freaking shit in order to become the person he was. And I actually totally fucking volunteered myself to God as a kid. Be like, hey, I know I might have to experience some hardship and stuff, but I am willingly volunteering myself if you would like to forge me into a tool to be able to help other people. And I feel like that's what God has been doing with me my entire life. And so when I encountered hardships throughout my life, instead of, I would still experience pain, and I would still get, have those moments of, anger. I'd go off at God and be, what the fuck? Are you fucking kidding me? Something else? Like, why so much on me or whatever? Like, I totally had those outbursts like all the time, but I'd have my little outburst and I'd always come back to, God will never give me more than I can bear. Like, he knows, he knows what I can bear, and, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And I would remind myself that, that I was being forged into something. I was like, I'm going through this now, and when I come out of it, I'll be able to help other people because of these experiences. And guys, that's probably like, I think being optimistic as fuck and a fighter, like, definitely helps. But honestly, it's probably the whole, like, God thing, like, having that trust and that faith that, like, really helped get me through so much of the shit that I went through. Like, having faith in something outside of myself. Feeling like there was someone there that knew all the things I was going through, that cared for me, and was watching over me, and holding my hand, couldn't or wouldn't, for whatever reason, stop it, but was there to, like, share the experience with me. And that made everything infinitely easier to bear, even when it was crazy bad. And I remember when I finally went to court my senior year of high school, um, I can't tell you how fucking, I mean, there have been times in my life where I actually, like, I kind of like, after I made it through court, it's kind of like a lot of things evaporated from my brain. Honestly, I think God knew I needed a break. I also think God wanted me to learn how to stand on my 2 feet without Him, so I could, develop my own strength instead of just, blindly like trusting in Him like all of the time. But when I made it through court, like a lot of my relationship with God kind of evaporated from my head. It's so weird, and it made me like when I started remembering it and realized I had forgotten about it. I, devastated isn't quite the right word, but like almost I couldn't believe that I had forgotten about this relationship that was so freaking important to me. Now I will say, like, I do feel like I've always been a little connected because even after I forgot about that relationship, I continued to pray and to talk to God all the time, even though sometimes I tell myself, well, I know He's not real, but I'm just going to talk to Him anyways because it makes me feel better. And I definitely remembered and had experienced the power of prayer, you know? So I was like, well, I definitely believe in this. And, it just makes me comfortable to pray to God or whatever. So I'll just do that because that's what I like to do. And it helped. But there were lots of times where, like I questioned. The more I was exposed to other Christians in the South, the less I wanted to be associated with like Christianity and stuff. And at this point, like, no, I'll tag out of that. We'll just say spiritual, because I do think that there's truth in a lot of different religions and stuff in the world. Christianity is just one of many stories designed to get us all to the same place in the end, hopefully. But yeah, like, I mean, that was a huge thing for me, and I don't know how I could have gotten through it without that. But like some other, I mean, these days, like hardly anybody is like spiritual or religious at all. But some other things that helped me was I've always been a problem solver, and so anytime I have encountered a problem in my life or with myself, I have sought to analyze the situation and explore how I might solve that problem. And so I've practiced a lot of like self help and improvement and growth stuff over the years. I think some of my favorite things were, I remember, I don't know where I heard it the first time, but I heard that if you tell yourself a lie often enough, you'll believe it. So one of the very first things I started to do was, I knew the kind of person that I wished I was, and I did not feel like that kind of person. So I started telling myself, they were lies to me at the time. Now I don't think they were lies, but I started telling myself things like, like I'm awesome, and I don't know, everything's okay, and like, I was wonderful in different ways and stuff like that. And I would like repeat that shit like mantras, like all the freaking time. And anytime my brain would start to be like, like this is your fault or you're not good enough or something like that, I would immediately try and shut it down, and I'd be like, no, we're not, that's not who we are. We're this. Even though at the time I knew I was trying to lie to myself. But the crazy thing is that like over time, I did start to believe the things that I had perceived to be lies. And then with more time passed, I realized that I don't actually think those were lies. Like, I think that was the truth, and I just didn't realize it. Maybe some things were lies in the beginning. It's hard to say, because this is all basically, just, think about the fact that metaphorically, like, we're organic computers. Like, everything that we take in genetically in our environment, everything else, like, that is our programming. And in order to have some sort of control over your own programming, if you want to change your life, you need to take control over your program, and you need to figure out how to reprogram yourself and how to unprogram yourself. But you can't do that until you realize that you're being programmed and recognize some of the bad programming that's in your system, the things that you need to overcome. In the South, a lot of that is, a lot of it is like religious trauma type shit, like, people making you feel like you're not good enough or whatever, like if you don't go to church, you're going to hell. And if you are gay, blah, 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 blah. And if the X, Y, and Z, all of those things. If you're a woman, you're not as capable as a man. And just all of those things, and looking at these things that society tells us and then challenging it. Because why the fuck do we need to accept why do we need to accept what somebody else came up with, especially since some of the stuff is so outdated and it was come up by people that were only really interested in their own freaking agenda. Like, we can create our own realities. We can control the perspective that we choose to experience things from, and we can reprogram ourselves. We can become different people. And I feel like there are a lot of things in the world that try to prevent us from actually doing that. But there are also a lot of things, especially in the last 10 years, that are trying to help people realize that you can change your mindset and change your life. You can change your perspective and change your life. I mean, it's that simple, but saying it's that simple, it's easier said than done. Like, it takes practice and persistence and willpower and stuff, but it can definitely be done. And that is definitely one of my big secrets. So yeah, there's actually lots of other things that I think have helped me. I mean, I was very fortunate that when I came out about being raped, that my family actually believed me, and that was incredibly helpful. Because I know a lot of people don't experience that, and if your family doesn't support you, then reach out to someone like me or somebody else that's gone through shit or whatever, so that at least one person that will believe you and support you, because otherwise you end up in a very lonely, isolated, and painful place. And I think just, kind of going back to that, like, fighter spirit or whatever, as an elder sibling and someone, I mean, like, I feel like I'm like a big sister or sometimes a mom to, like, the entire fucking world. The way I worry about everyone in the world, I feel like fucking, like mom of the whole fucking planet. Um, but I loved being an elder sister, and I liked taking care of other people. And so, like, when I came out about being raped, and I didn't talk about this in the other video, when I came out about being raped and I went through the legal system, I was kind of pushed into the legal system. I didn't really want to do it, but when I was pushed into it, I decided to do it, not because I wanted to punish my ex-stepfather, and because I felt a desire for, like, revenge or anything. Like, I did it because I wanted to stop him from hurting somebody else. And let me tell you, like, there were so many times that I wanted to, like, back out, and there were so many times afterwards where I wish I hadn't have done it, because in a lot of ways, going through the legal system, being put on trial and stuff like that, and all of the stuff that came from it, in a lot of ways, it was even harder than the actual, like, assault that I experienced. Like, it more drastically affected my life, and I couldn't pretend that it wasn't happening, and everybody, or a lot of people knew about it, but I did it because it's like, usually, or at least in the past, like, I needed reasons outside of myself in order to do things. So it was like, instead of being like, I'm going to stand up for myself, and be like, I'm going to stand up for other people that can't. And that helped motivate me a lot. And that's one of the reasons that I'm sharing all this and speaking and stuff or whatever, like, it is therapeutic for me to share things. But also, I always hope that somebody will hear some of the things I've shared and it'll help them feel less alone, or it'll make them more aware of potential dangers. And I don't know, maybe one of these days we can, solve these problems. So yeah, I think I'll cut that here. I just, sorry if all the, like, God and stuff talk, like, made anybody uncomfortable, but, like, if you know me, you probably know, like, I'm a big believer in, like, transparency, openness, and honesty, and trying to communicate and stuff. And there are definitely some areas that I've been hesitant to talk about in the past, but I'm tired of, like, not talking about shit just because other people might get their feathers ruffled. So anyways, yeah, thank you, God, for freaking being with me my entire freaking life. even when I didn't believe in you. Uh, I mean, I legit for years, guys. I was like, people would ask me what I believe, if I believed in God or whatever, and I was like, well, I don't really think he's real. But if he is real, I think he's wise enough and loving enough to know that I'm just a little human doing the best I can, and I think he's gonna forgive me for not thinking he's real, and that we're gonna be okay. Like legit. I mean, let's say he isn't. Which I mean, I know him to be real, but let's say he isn't real. I still think like that's a good, kind of like process to have. And be like, yeah, I'm just a kid doing the best I can. You know, Parents are usually loving and understanding, at least if they're good parents. And there's a lot of really awesome things in the world, so I can't imagine our creator being a bad parent. So, yeah.